consultation took place over the last few months, has its genesis almost 3 years before, when the United Nations, realizing that the Millennium Development Goals was coming to an end, we needed to find a successor set of targets to replace the MDGs. And that is where the Sustainable Development Goals began. The difference between MDGs and the SDGs was that the SDGs was one that was developed by member states with a heavy emphasis on implementation. And the SDGs sought to tighten its targets to ensure that the targets are relevant to the member states. And the SDGs process allowed for member states to factor the SDGs into their national planning process, so that when countries have their own development plans, they can adopt and incorporate the SDGs. The SDGs were derived not a top-down approach. There was civil society involvement at the UN system that make it relevant to people, like poverty reduction, education, safe drinking water, energy for all, renewable energy, and those sort of things. It is important because the development paradigm now looks at the resources of small states. This is what the difference between the SDGs and the MDGs. The SDGs look at the resources of small states because we live on small islands and our resources are finite, whether it's people, whether it's maritime. And it's important to people because it allows us to have that sort of balanced development. We are looking right now in terms of what are the issues prevailing in Trinidad and Tobago, as you know, poverty reduction, sustainable development, and so forth, which the SDGs have the respective goals for. So we know that from the first get-go that those SDG goals will factor in. So those are the kind of things that we can pick out very early in terms of any prioritizing of the SDGs. Now, as I said, there's 17 goals, actually 16 goals, and the 17th one is the goal on implementation. So that naturally has to be implemented by all. The challenge to implement the SDGs in Trinidad and Tobago is similar to the challenge that was faced in previous planning efforts. It's buy-in. People have to buy into the idea. The SDGs have to be made relevant to people. We have to start with the ministries and get the ministries to take ownership of the various SDG goals that will be related to their individual sectoral priorities. And those ministries, of course, will consult with their respective stakeholders. For example, like Labour has the tripartite approach. They have their Labour stakeholders. You have Ministry of Trade and Industry with their business stakeholders. So these ministries and their stakeholders will have to buy in to the SDGs. Now, as you know, we do have a fiscal challenge right now. So that also has to be factored into the whole scheme of things. What can we do in the medium term and what can we do in the next medium term? So Vision 2030 will be done in that medium term paradigm. 2016 to 2020 will be the first 5 years, and then 2021 to 2026, and then you move on to 2030. There's no way we could put down a plan for the next 15 years and commit to this 15 years because of changing global dynamics. As you know, right now the price of oil is a challenge. And of course, we have challenge of global conflicts and in other parts of the world that may affect trading relations and so forth. So the SDGs look at it in that global context. It gives our economic prosperity a global dimension because everyone depends on everybody else. And this is something that has been lacking for some years in development paradigms. We don't have a huge domestic economy like the United States, which can really basically survive on its own, right? Our GDP depends on exports, you know? So our market and our survival in terms of our employment depends on the prosperity of the world outside. With respect to pocket issues, which is what a lot of people in Trinidad and Tobago will be focused on, the SDGs allow what is known as sustainable economic growth. What is sustainable economic growth? Sustainable economic growth is trying to avoid what we are going through right now, these ups and downs, because we are dependent on commodity prices for our development. That is, the revenues from the energy sector flows through the central bank to the government treasury. We can't depend on the energy sector much longer. So the SDGs pushes innovation, they push sustainable economic growth, they push diversification. And because we are committed to work with the UN system in this global agenda, the population have to understand that Trinidad and Tobago is not an island unto itself. The prosperity of other countries also impact on our own prosperity. If the Eastern Caribbean people cannot buy our products from the manufacturing sector will have loss of jobs and so forth. So the global interconnection is what the SDGs was based on, simply because development in any part of the world can affect Trinidad and Tobago. The most challenging SDG is the most important SDG, which is sustainable economic growth, because it demands that member states push diversification and innovation. So we have to create the environment to allow for innovation at the business level, not only at the individual level, because I think Trinidad and Tobago, we are innovative people by our nature and our culture. But how do we translate that into a productive enterprise? Innovation has a way of creating permanency in terms of bringing new products and businesses to market. Because if you look at sustainable development, as fast as a product becomes, I wouldn't say, for want of a better word, extinct, or the demand for it drops, you have to create new products and new markets. So innovation allows for that complete cycle, and so therefore you have a constant sustainable growth path. That is the key challenge that we have to do. Right now we got accustomed to our commodity-based economy, which is oil and natural gas. To win our way out of that, the private sector has to reorient itself. The SDG's success can only happen if every citizen is productive in their own sphere. Whether you are helping to alleviate poverty, whether you are helping to improve settlements, whether you are helping to do environmental protection, you have to be productive in those entities. It relies on the productivity of the population. That is how the average man contributes to the success of the SDGs. The long-term goal of Vision 2030 and the SDGs, and actually there is this trend to look at the world in 2050. So the long-term goal for Trinidad and Tobago is developed country status. That is a well-educated workforce, a healthy population, a productive people, and of course, preserving the environment. With all those indicators combined, which is the economic, the social, and the environment, that is developed country status. Because those are the paradigms that you measure a country on developed country status. Not only whether we reach a point where we have huge amount of foreign exchange, but your population has to be healthy, they have to be educated, the environment has to be preserved, and of course, we have a well-modern infrastructure. That's developed country status. The path to that is the difficult journey.